we had a Zoom audience there who didn't know who was speaking, so try to get folks to say their names when they start talking. And if I may, make a little bit more effort to call on people. I feel bad that half the audience didn't get to talk. I don't know where they stand.
Yeah.
I think the others will be smaller. I had the most RSVPs for the first one.
Okay. Okay.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this community meeting for the town of Scottsville, working on some housing projects. It's 12:33 on January 15th, 2022. We'll start the meeting up here at Victory Hall in just a moment. This is our Zoom stream, and we'll have this video on the town's YouTube channel in the future. So thank you if you're tuning in then. The AV setup here doesn't work well for back and forth, so we're in spectator only mode here. We'll be sharing the screen, splitting it between the camera in the room and the presentation up on the screen behind us. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you. Yeah, I think so. All right. Thank you. Hello. Good. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming down. Yes. Hello. Thanks for coming down. Hey, man.
We find it out there.
Yeah, that is for the arts.
Oh.
Okay.
And your
Yeah.
stop me when one of these.
Yeah. So when we
How do you spell Appalachian?
APPALACHIAN.
Yeah. They don't
That's what I thought. It's not no, on their thing. AIN.
Oh, where's
No, not on anything.
Oh,
just
no, okay.
Not on anything you did. It's just right there. Appalachian.
Appalachian? Uh-huh.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Where I'm trying to find your presentation. Is that a Word document?
No, it's a PDF.
It's a PDF. Okay.
But there, it's there. It's a, yeah, it should be that one. No, go. Mate, can I drive?
Go for it.
Okay.
Take the wheel.
So the reason I would do
All right,
that
we're gonna
is so I
get
can
started
go-
in just a second. We're just.
Wait, this is
figure out
not,
the presentation.
not awesome.
It's not.
PDF. Is this functioning as two?
It's just like it's two screens.
None of these are my PowerPoints, so maybe we closed it accidentally. So yeah, this is no problem. It's got full presentation.
Oh, you
That's
got it on.
but they can't figure out how to work the
Go to the
mouse.
right.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. I thought it was. In my defense, though. Thanks.
Should we start, or should we start from that?
Did he walk out that way?
He did walk out.
I think
Thank you for your patience.
you might be able
as
to
we're
start. Yeah, I think
waiting to
so.
make sure we have everybody here.
Just let me know if the folks on Zoom, if I need to do anything extra.
So I don't have anyone on here yet, so I'll
Okay.
let you know. Yep.
All right, first off, I just introduce myself. I'm Jeff Sadler. I am the founder and principal of Complete Community Economies. It's just a company I formed. I call it a company, but it's me. And then partners that bring in, like Ann Darby, who's with Summit. And so Ann, do you want to do a quick introduction of,
Myself?
yes?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Ann Darby. I'm the planning department manager for Summit Design and Engineering. I'm a planner based in Richmond. I've worked before moving to the private sector, worked in the public sector my whole life. So that's my experience and bent. And I'm just here to offer a objective third-party facilitation and assessment and give you the benefit of my planning experience.
All right, well, great. And my background is I ran the state's community revitalization office at Virginia Department of Housing and Community Development. So that encompassed things like the Main Street program, the Industrial Revitalization Fund, Enterprise Zone, and then a savings match program, which doesn't necessarily fit with the others, for very low income savers to help them buy a house. That was within that same program. I was also a local Main Street manager in Rocky Mount, Virginia, which is 10 times as big as Scottsville. So, it's about 5,000. What we've been asked to do is make sure that everybody understands what the proposal is, kind of what the background is, so everybody's working with the same information. Have an opportunity for people to ask questions. But the result we'd like to get out of today is some comments or suggestions. So that could be your comment or suggestion is, I don't like any part of this and I don't want any part of it. Or it could be that we would like what are known as conditions for a special use permit. And I do want to preface all of this is that this is the proposal. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily exactly what needs to be passed. But if there are changes, they need to be put forward as conditions during the city council meeting to be voted on. The other background piece is that, especially when we're talking about the Bird Street development in a moment, the property owner by right, which means without having to go through this process, can build up to 13 residential units on there. And that's just good to know, because if nothing comes out of this, or if the conditions are too onerous, the property owner can just start building kind of whatever it wants within, there are some environmental things that they're gonna have to do. That's just the background. And so the first thing I just wanted to show is this is the census data from 2010 to 2020. And census shows a decline of 7.4%. Now, this could just be a one-year blip. This could be that somehow the counting was a little bit off. What I've seen is that roughly between 500 and 600 people for the last 20 to 30 years has been fairly stable. But this does show a decline. Reasons that the decline could be that you just have an aging population, and it is aging out of this world, or at least this community. It could be that household sizes are shrinking, or it could be possibly that there's not appropriate housing for replenishment. Missing part of the slide.
Oh, the memory.
Well, so what this was showing is that there are on paper 301 residential structures in Scottsville, of which 43 are vacant. So why are they vacant? Are they vacant because they're Airbnbs? Are they vacant because they're somebody's second home? Are they vacant because they have not been kept up and are unfit? Are they vacant because somebody passed away and left it to their 7 kids and their 7 kids don't care? These are all fairly typical, but that is a pretty large percentage of the housing. All right. Could be missing a slide here.
Right.
But I'll talk more about, this is the housing stock. So 40% of the housing stock was built prior to 1939. That would be 80-year-old housing. 80-year-old housing is fairly, that would be more like your historic housing, I guess is what I'm saying. That could also be some smaller, older farmhouses that may not quite be appropriate. We don't know exactly, but that's there. More importantly, I think, is that 44% of the houses were built between 1940 and 1980. Again, a wide variety of what that housing could be typically. That was wartime housing. It usually is not of a super high quality. And then as you moved, especially into the 70s, workforce housing was generally of lower construction. 50s and 60s housing varied, but it could be very sturdy. And then 0% of the housing has been built since 2000. So roughly 10 years, I understand there has been at least one house. I don't believe it's actually 0 houses have been built in the last 11 years.
This is from the American Community Survey, which is part of the census. It's the long form that asks all the details. If you've ever gotten that, it's got a maybe 6 to 7% margin of error. So 0% doesn't mean 0.
It just means that a very, very, very small amount of housing has been built recently. I bring this up just to set the stage for what the housing stock looks like. Housing replenishment, generally speaking, is fairly important for a community's long-term health. Also, having housing that is newer can offer better accessibility options than older housing typically does. Now I'm going to turn it over to Ann real quickly. And we're not.
Go ahead.
What's that?
You were gonna say something.
Yeah, when we get to some questions later on or comments, we'd really like you to introduce yourself at the start of your questions or comments. But that's why we didn't do introductions up there, other than us. So go ahead.
Okay, I just want to give a little bit of background as to the planning and the community involvement that's already happened. I'm so sorry, I keep standing in front of your way. I will just keep moving as I remember. There was a mixed use, mixed income study that was done in 2018 that included economic analysis of the area, the potential for development at the tire factory and in the general area. And part of that was a community survey. So of the people involved, the type of housing, people were asked about the type of housing. So 24% of respondents said that it was really important that small, affordable single family homes were created in town. That's 2 to 3 bedrooms. 19% of people said that mid-sized single family homes, 3 bedrooms, were really important to add to the mix. And 14% of respondents said that senior living was really important. And especially as we talk about these trends in population and the type of housing that's needed, it's really important for people to be able to stay in their community, as if you don't want to take care of the huge house that you've lived in, maybe it's a historic home, maybe it's too many square feet, but you don't want to leave the community. It's really important to have those options for senior living.
Excuse me, I'm Janet Woods. I'd like to know who participated in that survey.
We can get you that information. We've read the survey report, and I think the town probably has the raw data if you're interested. It's not common to give out the. You're asking
I don't
for
want
people's
the names. I
Okay.
want to know who were the recipients of the survey and who answered. Was it just the townspeople?
The one on the previous slide.
Yeah.
Hello, I'm Matt Lois. I'm the town administrator. I did that project when I was new on the job to sort of learn my way around and what the market was. The 131 people there was a mix of in-town and out-of-town residents. We put flyers around local businesses, and we had a website outreach as well. So a mix of in-town and out-of-town, but everybody in like greater Scottsville, the kind of community of people that use the grocery store.
So if we didn't use the grocery store, but we live right on the edge of Scottsville, we wouldn't have gotten the information.
Grocery store, hardware store, coffee shop, post office, those kinds of places.
Never went to those kind of things because we worked in Charlottesville.
Okay.
So we were and we lived right on the edge of Scottsville. And, but we weren't a party to the
Okay.
survey. I just
I'm
wanted
glad
that-
you're here now.
That's just to let you know that not all of the people in the area affected
Oh,
were reached.
of course, it's frankly, outreach is really important in the planning process. It's also the most difficult part of the planning process. We aim generally for a 10% participation rate, which seems low, but it's actually really, really high. So you said 131 people responded. That's actually a fairly good response rate. And hopefully next time there's a survey, you'll be involved, but it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody in town answered the survey. So again, I think there was more public input for a small area plan that encompassed the western area of town, including the tire factory and the Bird Street site. And I think that just one of the key takeaways is that it was appropriate to support private sector construction of homes in that area. It doesn't say necessarily specifically what types of homes or the density, but just in general, the planning that's done, the background that's been laid, this is consistent with that.
So this is just talking about the housing market. I want to start off by saying we discuss affordable housing, and everybody has a different image of what that is when they hear that term. What in any context we're going to use today, affordable housing means housing that is affordable for a median family in the area, a median household. What does that translate to? Basically, that means a third of your gross income goes towards your housing costs. So that's your utilities, your mortgage, your insurance, your interest, all of that. If you're renting, it's basically your rent and your utilities at that point. The cost of housing, new housing right now is roughly $160 to $200 per square foot. That varies widely depending on the amenities that you get and just the trim levels, that type of thing. I can tell you right now, materials costs probably make this outdated a little bit. Hopefully materials costs will come down a little bit. So if we are looking for this, the affordable range is about $250,000 to $300,000 for a home. That means you're generally going to get 1,200 to 2,200 square feet. And again, just depending on, do you have, is it just completely wrapped in vinyl, or do you have some sort of stone or brick facade on the front? Do you have an actual usable porch, or is it basically just a landing area? Garages add anywhere from $30,000 to $50,000 to the cost of the house. But what you can get reasonably is 2 to 3 bedrooms and 1.5 to 2 bathrooms. Are they big, huge master suites? No. But in this range, you can get a house that is suitable for a family. And then semi-detached, so that would be like a duplex or a triplex where it's side by side or maybe one on top of the other. Those bring the cost down somewhat. They also have your ongoing costs are a little bit lower because you're only heating or air conditioning 3 walls instead of 4, because one of them is a shared wall. So there are ways you do have additional savings going on. So I think we had our layout on here. Somehow we've lost some of the information on here, so I really apologize.
We could switch to the PowerPoint. I think it's the PDF that lost the memory. Yeah. It's okay. We can you
Right, so
switch?
we're going to take just a
Yeah.
quick break, but while they're switching that over, does anybody have any questions so far? I mean, this is just the lay of the land.
Yeah, go to that.
Yeah.
Yep, that folder and the second item down, go to the other screen.
But a lot besides on.
Here, here.
Oh, it's up there.
Land is.
I know, it's anti-distinction.
They just break up the land. But they can
This
sell
should be
all
fine then,
buildings, they can
okay.
sell 30 buildings. And then. Whether we like working for garages or.
I'm the wrong person to be sitting.
You're doing a great job.
Well, first off, can you introduce yourself?
Well, I'm Bill Hyde, yeah.
Okay, so Bill Heisen, his question
Okay.
was, does it matter what we like or what we don't like? As the proposal is right now, no, because the proposal doesn't have any on there.
Right.
One of the things we want to have this conversation around is what are some conditions you might like to put on those? So do you want to have a minimal footprint for the house? I don't know that you can really do a minimum square footage, but a minimum footprint might be appropriate. Do you want to require a porch? And if so, anything more about that? One thing you don't see so much anymore, there was a trend maybe 10 or 15 years ago of what were known as snout-nosed houses. And that's where there's a big 2-car garage and then the house was kind of behind it. So you could say that that is not appropriate, not acceptable. So there's a whole wide range of what that is. This is the time to have that discussion.
Can I answer that?
Yes, please.
Yeah, so right now, the builder by, or Dr. Hurt by right can put 13 houses up. They can be, we have no say over anything that happens. If he wants to put 14 up there, then we get a lot of say as to what happens. And regardless of whether you sell one lot off or all of them off, they've still got to, and they still have to adhere to the requirements that we put in that special use permit. So, the question before us now is what we'd like to see up there. Because we can now say, Dr. Hurt, if you want, what we want is 20 houses and we want them to look like this. And here's what we are going to allow you
I
to
can
do.
just click through for you. That's cool.
So what we have now is the ability to sort of envision what we want up there. And if Dr. Hurt can find somebody to build what we want, great. If he can't, then he can build his 13 houses and build them up. So that's kind of what we're doing.
So we could tell them what to build.
Well,
We're telling, yeah, we put limitations on it.
so I do want to just take that one step further. And again, and my job, our job today is just to help this conversation take shape. I don't have a preference one way or the other on this. So I just wanted to make that part clear. But the other thing is that if the conditions, as I said earlier, if those conditions are viewed by the developer as overly onerous or too burdensome, then they can just say, okay, well, I'm not going to do the special use permit, and the default would be the by right construction. So that's the balancing act that always happens along here. You need to make sure that the development fits your needs as a community. But you also have to think about how it's viewed by the developer as well. So what I want to do next is that these renderings, all the houses that are up here are roughly affordable in that we kind of expanded it to 225,000 to 325,000. These are the types of houses that you would get. We actually took a tree out somewhere in here so you could see the houses better, but every house is required to have a tree in front. Is that correct? With the current proposal? Everybody, just remember that.
I don't think it's every single one, but it's spaced outside that style.
Well, they would be on the property of the house, the home.
So they could let them die.
They could.
So then we wouldn't have a tree.
Well, that's a good example of a condition that could be set. That's something that a lot of localities do. And for example, in terms of parking lot landscaping, is not just to say you must have a tree, but you must have a tree that will be a certain height within a certain time, and you must have a maintenance plan and replacement plan. So it's good. I'm gonna write that down as a potential condition.
Yeah, and I can do zoning enforcement on that. This was,
Yeah,
it was approved that these trees be here and the trees are dead, have to replace them. in the right place.
I'm also just wondering if it wasn't on the landowner, then who from like the town would be taking, because we don't have that.
So it becomes the property owners for an HOA.
Real quick for
Zone
those,
village residential right now, or is the bird historic district?
outside of historic district roads.
Can I ask you all, for our folks at home, is anybody at home
I
today?
think we have a couple, yeah.
Okay, to also, when you make a comment or a question, you could just introduce yourself. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think the other point,
I'm sorry.
Matthew,
Thank you.
the reality of it is, if you get into the high density, any level of high density, it has to be homeowners association based on the burden of the cost of the water system set. So the idea that that would be maintained would probably fall on the homeowner. What on, the individuals would have to pay for the homeowners association.
But it's
When you
townspeople,
look
we
at
would
the setup
have
like
to
this.
say over that.
What's that?
As townspeople, we would have to say over it.
Absolutely, they have no say over a homeowners association, they have more authority than we do. So that's the point, when you get into high density, all this is, if to do home density, you have to have homeowners association. Not because it's a law, because the financial situation is, they put homeowners in place to absorb that.
What's high density, like 4 units per acre?
Anything above by right.
So, the renderings that we have here, these are not homes that have been proposed by the builder. These are homes that fit within the price range. And if there are elements of this that you like, you could ask for those as a condition. If there are elements that you do not like here, you could also put those in the condition. All we were trying to do at this point is show what would fit roughly on the lot at approximately the price.
I'm getting with it. You keep saying affordable units. And it's known in Albemarle that this is not an affordable county, like everything is very high. So you might have that price point of 225 as an ideal, but the way that the real estate market is going right now is like you can put that as asking, but it will go over. So my thought on this is that it's not actually going to be affordable for the community. It might be affordable for people in Charlottesville coming down, but like, I just don't, you keep saying affordable, I just don't know what that actually means.
So it means roughly 30% of the community's median household income is what I'm using. Again, nothing in this proposal says that these have to be at this price range. This is being presented as what you can get at that price range. And if that is something that you would like to have, you would need to put it as a condition. So if, you know, this is not just Scottsville. This is across Virginia. There is housing problems in every community in Virginia, and it's completely different in some areas than it is in others. But the cost of new housing is super expensive, which means that less of it is being built now than has been built really at any time in the last 50 years, which means there is less supply while we have increasing populations. So it is a big deal. That doesn't have anything to do with this specific proposal. I'm just saying that it is a big, I'm acknowledging your issue.
May I interject a little bit there's already been a suggestion, and it was in the staff report to request that there are duplexes, maybe triplexes and quads in that in order to make it more affordable, because a single family home is so unaffordable.
That's just more pressure on the community though, to have more population within a smaller area, which we already are not meeting the needs for traffic, CenturyLink. I mean,
Right, what I'm gonna ask,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna ask that we get through some more of this, because some of this is discussed later. I mean, I'm not discounting what you're
No,
saying.
no, I
I'm
get
just
it,
saying, I wanna
yeah.
make sure we have a good structure.
I understand.
So, all right. So, anyways, again, I just wanted to, most of this is just what fits in that budget. It could be appropriate. Okay. So this house is roughly 1,600 square feet. It's 2 stories. It's fairly compact. And I know you can't really see the layout, but again, this is a 3-bedroom. I think 2 full baths and maybe a half bath downstairs. This is a smaller version. This one is roughly 1,400 square feet, 1 story. Again, it has technically 3 bedrooms, so you could have 3 bedrooms in there, but those are fairly small bedrooms. This one's about a little under 1,000 square feet. This is a duplex. You know, the doors don't have to both face front, they could both face to the side, you know, this is just generally ideas of sizes. All right, and then this is the Blenheim Heights, and this is the general layout of this. Again, these houses a little bit different. That neighborhood is different. Most of the houses that are there seem to have been built in the 50s, 60s, 70s. And most of them have accessory garages. So like a whole different building with a garage, or have built a garage on the side of the house. So some of these houses do represent garages. Some of them also have where to, these are just things to think about as opportunities. What's sort of known colloquially is like a granny flat or a mother-in-law suite, but basically an additional part of the house that would allow maybe your parents to come live but not be have their own space. Does that make sense a little bit? Anyways, again, just trying to think about what it could be. There, that's a garage portion. I don't know if that's appropriate or not. And this just shows that little side portion. So the lots are a little wider up in Blenheim Heights than they are in on Birch. So I'm going to let Ann talk about traffic for a little bit. This is kind of wrapping it up here, and then we'll get into a lot more.
It's real sensitive. If you just keep it there and click,
Okay.
you can be able to zoom.
Okay, great, thanks. So one of the concerns that people have had is the traffic. A traffic impact analysis is something that engineers should do with a lot of data, a lot of math involved. I'm a planner, as I've said, so what we do is to generally use a general rule of thumb to do a back of the envelope general idea of what the traffic would be. It may be that there needs to be a detailed engineered traffic impact analysis, and maybe that's where the conversation goes. But just so I do this so I can wrap my brain around it of what exactly we're talking about in terms of traffic. And so I want to share this with you. So this section of Valley Street, just north of Main Street, on either side of Bird Street, currently has 6,200 cars per day. That obviously is people going through town. And there are positives to this. I understand that downtown businesses have grown, and a lot of that is in part to people coming through and supporting businesses in town. The general back of the envelope math here is that the Institute for Transportation Engineers, which is the United States go-to for all information of a traffic impact analysis and this kind of study. And as a general rule of thumb, you can estimate that a new household has a maximum of 10 trips in a car per day. That means picture that, go ahead.
Tom Woods, that's 1 car, right? Most families have 2 cars.
Yeah, it's exactly. So picture 10 trips per house per day. An average American household has 1.9 cars per household, right? Let's round that to 2. So each of those cars is making 5 trips a day average. Again, this is just to give you an idea, a back of the envelope study to give you a percentage. If the town wants to have a traffic impact analysis done, I think that would be a great idea. This is not detailed. This is just to put things in perspective so that we can understand how each of these developments might be affecting these particular road segments. Does that make sense?
To a degree.
To a degree. That's all I needed to make. Okay, so the idea, and just back of the envelope math again, is if there are 48 new units on Bird Street making 10 trips a day, simple math, 480. 480 is 7, that's my typo there. You can still redid the math. 480 is 7.7% of 6,200. So that's a 7.7 increase in traffic. That's not a huge impact in traffic. I understand that the I was just talking to a gentleman about how the intersection of Valley and Bird not just has a lot of traffic, but it also has low visibility, sight lines, et cetera.
Okay, are you gonna get to the point that when that road goes on up to James River Road at the intersection at the top of
I am.
the hill, you got. Blenheim
VDOT does
Road
it by
coming in
segments, and so
also?
we do it by segments. Okay, so the next is Bird Street between Page and Valley. It currently has 1,000 cars a day. So 48 times 10, 480, 480, it's 48% of 1,000. So in that segment, you would be looking at a very significant increase in traffic. And again, not a scientific engineered study. I'm not differentiating. I'm just talking about household car trips. 48% increase in traffic. So the segment south of Main Street on Valley is, so we call it Route 20 to the bridge. It's currently 4,900 cars a day. So that's an increase of 9.7% increase in traffic. So for Blenheim though, it's 1,500 cars per day in the area in front of Blenheim. Again, 25 units, 10 trips per unit per day, 250. That's a 16% increase in traffic in that area. Again, you can create, I mean, you can blow the methodology wide open. The idea is to just give an idea of relative per segment, what we're talking about in terms of additional traffic.
Additional traffic of that, I understand that going to Blenheim. But you're gonna get on James River Road, and you're gonna go to Route 20 intersection at the top of the hill, that you also have the market coming in and building a big thing there at the intersection. It's gonna increase traffic. Plus you got all the traffic at Bird Street going up that road and going through that intersection.
So your area of concern is Blenheim and Valley, or excuse me, Blenheim and James River.
Sure.
Yeah, that's where it all gonna come together.
So, and
So
again,
you're
I
in-
think that
you're
it's,
increasing Bird Street traffic. You're increasing Blenheim traffic. You're also increasing James River Road on the other side of 20 with the Market Street that's gonna be allowed to be built.
so I don't think
And-
that there's any, I don't think that there is any question that these projects will increase traffic. I mean, I don't think that it's possible to do them without increasing traffic.
I understand that if they're built, it's gonna increase traffic. That's my concern. What is being done to the infrastructure to help alleviate?
So
That's when we
that
get into the
intersection
conversation
traffic.
about, when we get into the conversation about conditions, I think that this is very fertile ground for conversation, because
And my question is too, is the town of Scottsville gonna pay for all this? Or is Dr. Hurt with his gonna have condition he's gotta pay if you're gonna put a stoplight there? That's, 200 grand or more.
that's exactly where this conversation should go.
yeah, and also, I just want to make sure, I've never spoken to the developer, nor has Ann. We are not here representing the developers. We are here to capture your all's comments.
I'm not saying you're here to do that. I'm here to say that I think the town really needs to look at this before they approve anything and understand the impact it has. I'm not in the town of Scottsville. I wish I was. They didn't come out far enough when they annexed, take me in. I'm exactly 2/10 of a mile in my driveway from Alabama Spring Road. So Blenheim affects me. And another thing I see on Blenheim, looking at this, is you're popping over that hill where the water tower is. There's no right turn lane for people to get off the road and go ahead and turn into the subdivision. So you got people coming through there, and I don't know if any of you gone out there and just sat at the water tower and watched people go by and how damn fast they go down
It's
that
fun.
road. But it's dangerous. And somebody's gonna get hurt or killed at that intersection if there isn't a lane there for them to get over. I think
So-
that needs to be looked at strongly.
I'm hearing what you're saying, and I do just want to say, as a point of constructive conversation, what I'm hearing as a condition is traffic needs to be analyzed. We need to address right turn lanes and sight lines and speeding. So all of these things are surmountable, but I think that's why we parsed out the. Go ahead.
Right, and my thing is that all this needs to be looked at and taken care of prior to going ahead and voting and say, yeah, we're gonna allow you to do this
Sure,
until the infrastructure is in place.
sure.
Who's doing the water lines? Does Scottsville have enough water and sewage?
We
to
actually
cover
have answers to some of those questions. So what I'd like to do is make sure that we're doing these in a manner that we can address them individually. So go ahead.
Okay, I'm Janet Wood. When you do the studies about the daily car stuff, you have to take into account that if this is a seasonal, it's a seasonal thing. The traffic is seasonal. We have, starting in late March, we have going on Glenham Road, right there from James River Road up Glenham Road, we have buses that come through to go to Trump Winery, to Mount Ida, to the back roads through to the Monticello, et cetera. We have trucks that are these big dualies. And let me tell you, the girls who drive those big dualies are amazing. They're pulling horse trailers that are humongous. And they go through there at breakneck speed for a little road that's not much more than a pig path.
Are they breaking the speed limit to your knowledge?
Probably not, it could
Well,
not.
It depends. Once you get by Alabama Spring, it goes back to 55 miles an hour. So
Okay.
So I guess, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. The concern of this proposal is that we're to add additional traffic to already too much and too big traffic. Because this doesn't have anything to do with the buses going by,
no.
but it's just that that's going on.
But
So
the
it's
size
already-
of
It's all, what I want to stress more is that you cannot say that the increase of traffic of annually is going to be like 2.4 cars per minute or per day or whatever. It's not. From May until October, you're going to have an increase of that's 10 times as much.
Sure. When we said that, we just meant specifically generated by the development.
That's not going to help.
I
Because you're going to have people who are in that development who are there visiting and stuff like that, that you're not taking into account. They're taking part in these other
And that's a good point. And I really do, to your point, I didn't mean to cause more problems than not by doing the back of the envelope study. I just, it's a jumping off point and a way to see the relative impact on relative or different sections.
I'm going to jump back here, but I want to get back to your water question.
Yeah, I still have lots of feasibility questions. Of what's falling on the town and, you know, accessibility to internet and all schools, that sort of thing. But specifically for this development, reading this survey that y'all gave, you talk about walking trails, things like that. Would they be open to other citizens or is it exclusive to these?
I'm not sure that is specifically in the proposal, but I do believe that was a recommendation.
It can go either way. And then later on, I'll be glad to go over with you what aspects of this the town can control and who somebody else controls. So we have the choice on the trails. Give Lake Monticello as an example. It has all kinds of amenities in it that the regular Fluvanna County taxpayer doesn't have to pay for, what the regular Fluvanna County resident pays for. You have the choice of, do you want it to be HOA limited and restricted to its residents, or do you want it to be available to everybody in town publicly, but then have to pay for it? So the trails, what we've currently got drafted is the developer builds them, spends $1 million up front to build trails and sidewalks, then gives them over to the town as public access. So we would have to shovel the snow and pay for it.
Does the town have the resources and the money to pay for another personnel to do that?
I don't have an extra $50,000 right now. That's it.
Right, okay. So not to belabor that point, the other question I have on the survey is you go down and like, what is the amount of houses you would want? Why is the lowest level 6 houses on 9 acres or 8 houses on 12 acres mean that we also lose the walking trails?
So, yeah, that's a good question. So part of that is that by right, this property owner on Bird Street can build 13 houses without any conditions. And so I think if I understood what you were asking correctly, if it is fewer than 13 houses, there's no way to require them to build a trail for themselves or for anybody else. Also sidewalks, because they could just go and build those as it is right now. So is that what you were asking?
Yeah, I was wondering why it was like the fewest. It seems like that would be more green space to have more trails. But
They don't
It is, but it would,
Yeah.
it would be people's yards. Like
Right.
if you have 4 acres, you could split that in half, build another house and I can't.
I'm gonna jump back here real quick.
I don't want to take away from it, so if I am, I just want to address, Matthew, well, just want to address what you were bringing up about Blenheim and the concerns. That very concern were addressed and brought up to the planning board. And unfortunately, the ideology was that it's only 9 acres, it's only 24, so the impact isn't that high, without taking into what the 50 acres could provide onto that street. VDOT admitted that the gentleman was there, said, well, I just drove by, I really don't know. And then the other VDOT gentleman spoke about Route 20 for about 15 minutes, but not about money. So that has been expressed to the planning board, and the planning board determined it was negligible because it was only 24 homes. So that's again, an issue that's been brought up, that, you know, this has always been the issue about, I'm gonna call it spot zoning or spot development. I know it's technically not the right term, but to say you've got a 50-acre development, you're only gonna talk about 9. So the impact isn't hard, but it will be hard, just like we have down here. This is the problem with not having a comprehensive plan of the entire development and what the real impacts are gonna be. But this has been brought up with the planning board and it was determined negligible. They
Yeah,
determined
well,
it
for
wasn't
this
an issue.
section, it may be, but you know he's gonna develop the rest of the property.
That's
So
what
what
I'm
I
saying, I
look at.
don't agree with that determined, I'm just saying, that's what the plan was determined.
And it just, again, legally speaking, their intention may be to develop the rest. They would need additional special use permits. Granting this special use permit does not set a precedent for future.
I don't see how it does.
It does not legally, I guess I would say.
Yeah, that's what I would say.
Yeah,
But he
so,
say you did it here, you can do it here now.
And your renderings look so much like Crozet does right now. Just one little tiny house right next to each other. It's just,
well, so those renderings again are what that price point is. Those are not presented by the property owner at all. That is just
Yeah.
our attempt to say, this is what a neighborhood could look like. But it would depend on, you know. So the difference is if you want a bigger house, it's gonna cost more, in which case you're not providing. I mean, these are just the trade-offs. I'm not arguing for one or the other. I'm saying if you don't like the idea of these smaller houses, then you can have bigger houses, but then you're gonna lose the
I
affordability.
don't think the size of the house is that important, to be honest with you, as far as I'm concerned. I'm concerned about the infrastructure, who's paying for it, what's gonna happen. Blenheim Road is very narrow. I don't know if anybody here has driven out there and looked at it or not, and actually paid attention to what's there. But where you're planning on putting the intersection in, going in off of Blenheim Road to this subdivision, from the water tower down, if you go over 6 inches, somebody runs you off the road, you're in a 3-foot ditch. Rest of the way down to Alabama Springs.
Well, let me ask,
So, you know,
right, so I'm just asking this as a question, I'm not promoting something here. If the road, if there were road improvements, is that the issue that you have with Blenheim Road? So if there was a way, and I don't know what those would be, but if there was a way for you specifically to create a more safe intersection through there, does that solve the problem for you? I guess is what I'm saying.
I
I'm
don't
just-
know if it would solve it, but it would help with the issue.
So, I mean, that's fair. That's,
Right.
again, I'm not trying to promote one thing or the other. I'm just trying to
well,
get what
when
the
your
issue is.
construction's going on, where are these big trucks gonna be going? How are they gonna get there? It's gonna tear up what we do have. What we do have now.
Right.
Just those big bulldozers and that kind of stuff being hauled in. And there was no plan made for construction equipment. Much less for how we're going to maintain this road and live happily ever after.
Okay.
Do you have another question real quick?
No, you can go.
Real quick, did you have any
not sure what topic we're on.
Well, we're just generally talking about concerns. If there's questions that I might be able to answer,
Well,
or just concerns we want to
the condition can be, go back to affordability, can we
Real quick,
can we
maybe to
put,
say your name again.
Bill Heisman,
Thank you.
can we put a condition on the developer that we want, whatever size development they have, beyond or just 10% affordable housing, and we want the developer or the landowner to, give a discount on those 10% houses so that they have affordable housing. And that would be a way of getting affordable housing rather than doing these multiplex things and just say, these 5 houses have to be affordable and we want them at a discount or give them to us. And that's part of the deal there, to have our affordable housing.
I think that legally you can put that condition on. I think that you would need to define it
Right.
a little better. And again, just remembering that if the developer goes back and does the math and says, well, this just doesn't make sense, maybe you get nothing, or maybe you get 13 houses.
And we can put a condition on too, that it's nothing just a single house, no triplex. The biggest concern that I've heard is they don't want that thing like up Avon with these, with these triple, quadruplex. And you come through a historical town, and then you go to this entity with these, huge houses close together, sharing walls that don't fit in at all. So we could put that on the developer to say that we want something that looks nice, good appearance, no multiplexes, and fit into the town. We could say that.
May I actually interject just a little bit of food for thought? One, if you were to say you have all housing units that are all the same, but some are discounted, you at least need to address, how does that stop, when you say give them to us, are you talking about then they would be available to a lower income
Right.
owner,
Right.
buyer?
Right.
What, and then you'd have to address at least how to prevent that buyer then turning around and selling it at market rate. So
Right.
that's
So they couldn't flip it. Right.
yeah, it's a consideration. And then another thing too is that one way to make things more affordable is to use, I'm not talking multiplexes, big apartment buildings, we're not even talking about 3-story townhomes, anything like that. It is possible, and we have put into the renderings duplexes and triplexes so that, and again, there are ways to engineer them, to design them so that you actually, you can't tell, they basically all of the neighborhoods, they would have the same setbacks, the same appearance. So there's a way to make sure that you are creating permanently affordable housing rather than trying to figure out how to make that discount transfer in the market. But by creating, and Jeff mentioned sharing a two-party wall as a way to increase affordability, et cetera. So I know that anyway, there are lots of different ways to address that.
I'd like to follow up and put more of a point on that, and I will try to write it down in a way that it's legal. So in what you're describing, sir, is it okay if it looks like a farmhouse and has a front door and a side door and a side door, and is actually 3 houses, but it looks like one big farmhouse, and each piece of it costs less because of that?
Well, my feeling is.
Does that go to back?
No, I think it's that.
Back.
My feeling is that this is a small community and people come here to have a little bit of space between the neighbors. And you could get that kind of thing in Charlottesville and Crozet, but I don't think we have any triplexes in our town that I know of. And people don't come to a small town to live in a Charlottesville type house that's crowded together. And I just think that's who you're trying to draw here. Does a family want to live, close to close next to a neighbor like that?
So like the Jefferson Street cottages, where they're each little houses and they're 5 in a row.
Yeah.
You like those?
Yeah.
Okay. And what Ann said about selling it and the affordability. So if they give us the houses at a discount, and I only make $40,000 a year, it means me and my wife, and we get that house because it's more affordable and we get one of the bonus houses. What if I want to move? And now my house is worth more money. Do I get to sell it and keep the profits?
Yeah,
Or does it have to be, as you say,
That would be
permanent? Do you want permanent affordable?
Yeah.
Or am I allowed to do that sale?
that would be, that's beyond me, but that's.
I'm sure there's precedent out there on how to do that.
It can be done either way. So if you want permanent affordability, that's the thing.
Yeah.
If
You just want that comment to allow you to get that. Or I need to know.
I'm working on a project in Martinsville where the city is the developer to provide these, and they're roughly 1,000 square foot houses. In there, there is a deed restriction that says that they must be owner occupied for 5 years. At the end of 5 years, it's whatever.
I get to take my profits after 5 years. If it's going up in value.
Or you could sell it to somebody else, but they have to live there too. Really, what we were trying to make sure in that case was that these were not bought by speculators who are gonna run it out. Like you would have to choice. My opinion is if somebody who is lower income, I'm not supposed to have my opinions, but if someone is lower income has an opportunity to create wealth for themselves, I am personally for it. But that doesn't mean that it's right for the state. So yes, go ahead.
Just a couple things for clarity. So, the owner of the property is not planning on building anything. The owner of the property is asking us to give him more lots, which increases the value. He's planning on supposedly putting in infrastructure and selling lots. So we have no idea who, what, how, trees, not trees, none of that is part of it. So just for clarity, so the person who owns the property asking for special use, asking for increase lots of number of lot dwellings, whatever lot. We're not proposing any of this. These are examples of what it may or could be. To bring up a point about Jefferson Street, which is something that I brought the planning board down to take a look at. People cottages, those. Fortunately, with the size of Jefferson Street, it's a 3-bedroom, 1-bath ranch, shotgun type, not shotgun, but two kind of thing. That would take 2 lots. So the size lots that will be proposed, you would have to buy 2 lots to build that little house. So again, not kind of doing apples to apples on that. And then just to bring up, and that can absolutely clarify, at the workshop, the town council last workshop, Jim Bowling, our town attorney, I do recommend that we not try to designate low income housing. And he gave out very good reasons. And part of it is exactly what you said. With someone who in low income, just because of low income, they too have the right to share in the upward mobility that real estate provides for people without getting into the whole history and all that kind of stuff. So that was, there was a point that was presented and really kind of said that that's not a good thing. But, and not to give them the details.
And I really appreciate this conversation. This is, I think, a very productive waste of thought. I know we have lots more, so go ahead.
I just drew up that the limit heights of house or plots are 6,000 square feet. And the ones that virtually 4,000. When I first saw that, I thought it was wrong. It's the other way around. Why should they be smaller? Why not? We want a bigger place in Birch Street. Why? And there's no multiplexes at Lennon. That's what I understand. So it seems like people don't want these little small houses in small towns. They want some space. They want people. 4,000 is a pretty small. I mean, that's probably this would be a lot right here. Yes, so that's pretty small. So I think that should be adjusted.
So again, yes, that can be adjusted. What we, it looks like there may be, I don't know what the runoff requirements of this lot are, and the unimproved areas that are required for stormwater and environmental retention. But if we use the same basic area, expanding the lots would mean fewer lots, which would mean fewer homes. And that could be good. What that also means is that for the developer to make the same amount of money, which we may decide he doesn't need to make that, but he's the one that's making the decision. The homes would be potentially less than I guess is where that would go. If I can only sell, and basically, since he's not building the homes, each lot will become more expensive. So if you've got 48, I don't know what these lots are gonna go for, but let's say for easy math, $10,000. All right, I'm just saying for easy math, then 48 would be $500,000. So to get $500,000 out of 36, then the lots are 15. And that just compounds. Doesn't mean that's bad. I'm just saying these are the trade-offs that we are here to discuss.
Well, don't the lots get bigger, if you have less, you have 48, 4,000 square foot, and you get 36, then you get bigger lots.
Or you could, but you don't have to.
And I don't think the proposal that they gave us did.
Yes.
When they
So what do you do with the extra land?
Open space.
save it for.
Yeah,
open space,
no, the next conversation.
Yeah, this is-
Which is a bigger part.
The plan that we have right now.
So you don't say.
You have the response on planning commission.
I think so.
And then again, just legally speaking,
Yeah.
we are talking about these two. You could reasonably have the conjecture that there will be future requests.
And even since he's not developing it, we could just give him this special use permit to break up these lots, and then suddenly he can go and sell these lots to other developers, other plans, other things. And then we have no power over it. Once
I
it's
do
already
think it's
divided.
important to know that an SUP conveys with the land.
Yeah, to go over a little bit about how the law works. The special use permit is a special law that makes the land use rules for this piece of land. And it goes forever.
Okay.
And stays attached to that land for whoever buys it. So I rent in town now, for example. I could buy one of these lots and build a house on it. Or a builder like Craig or Southern out of Charlottesville could buy the whole thing and build all the model houses, or a bit of both. But they're always restricted to this layout. So that that pond that's there has to be there. The trails that are there have to be there. That's the law that town council is considering. So there's question marks on the white spaces on each side of it. But the green space, that's what we're debating.
Right, and any conditions that are on the SUP, for example, type of housing, the height of housing, the setbacks, the tree maintenance, et cetera, all of that would be part of the special use permit, the special law, and would convey with the land. So
Height's a good example. If we decided that we thought tall buildings were really bad and we didn't want any of these things to be taller than 20. Okay, I buy the lot. I want to build a 25-foot tall house. I can't.
Go ahead.
Just for clarity's sake, and I may be confused by that. so you can help me on this.
I'll try.
At the workshop, we were saying that, yes, the planning board recommended this, but the special use permit is still set up on 48, correct?
The applicant's request is for the 48.
Correct. So even when the planning board said, let's do this, it's still set up for 48?
Yeah, the
And
planning
you put
commission,
restrictions on it. I know.
yeah, if the planning commission's recommendation is less, the applicant would still rather have the total.
That's not-
And then town council has to make a choice on that.
Yeah.
I want to come back to you and ask some questions about water, sewer, et cetera. Do you want to ask a couple of those as specifically as you can, and we'll see if we can answer them as specifically as you can.
I just want to know, I know that these are setting up to be developed. It's probably going to happen to some degree. I don't know which or how many. But I think we all realize it's going to happen. So my question is, what's the infrastructure now that will support this and support Glenham? My understanding is the water tower sitting out there now, it's not full because they don't have the infrastructure to fill it, to maintain it. I don't know if that's true or not. It's rumors I've heard. If that's the case, then the second part is the town footing the bill for the putting in the water lines and all the infrastructure? Or is the developer gonna do it?
Okay, so
And I think it should be the developer before the town goes any further on anything.
and that is correct. It is the developer that would run them from the current infrastructure to the individual.
And does the current infrastructure support tying in that much more water and
Specifically,
septic systems?
specifically for water and sewer. and again, correct, I was not corrected last time, so I will repeat this time. This area is operating at approximately 1/3 maximum capacity. So adding, if you added all of these, it would not significantly reduce the available capacity for water and sewer. So would it bring it from 31% to 34%? Maybe, but it wouldn't be a significant impact.
The connection fees are pretty high. Admiral County Service Authority charges total connection fees for water and sewer of about $10,000. So you buy that lot, you want to build a house, you pay $10,000 right off the bat to get a water meter. It makes it harder to build a new house affordably. But what that does is that mean that yours and my water bill doesn't go up when new construction happens. For 50 years, the county has had a very strong policy that new development pays for itself for infrastructure. It makes it more expensive to build a new house, but it keeps our bills
I
lower.
understand that and agree with that. I have no problem with that. My question is there new enough infrastructure running from Bird Street to the system now that can tie into, or are they gonna have to replace the existing to make it work?
You saw, last year, they dug up Main Street and put in new pipes. Those are brand new pipes that have a 100-year lifespan. They've already scheduled to do the same thing on the west side of downtown next year, maybe the year after. And so they're replacing lines from the 1960s and putting in super plastic lines that are good for 100 years. That's already scheduled and will get done whether this happens or not.
Good to know.
Mr. Munson, you can't see him, but yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna make sure I was capturing this. and then back to it, okay?
Yeah, Stuart Munson on Jackson Street. And the concern that I have about this development is that there's still another piece of land to go with. That there's no, he's not showing us any indication of what he's going to do. So by right, he can still build, I think. 6 years old. So what I'd like to see is either a condition on the special use permit saying that he will not build any other houses over there and leave it open as part of this agreement, or he gives us an idea of what's going to be. Secondly, I'd also like to have some sort of, as you come down Bird Street to the north, he's talking about in this plan having driveways that come right out on Bird Street. I'd like to see some kind of a visual barrier along there. Because right now it's really nice. You walk along Bird Street, there's trees up there. You can play around in the space to the south of that. You know, looks like you're in the woods. So, you know, you put houses on the front of there, it's going to radically change the character.
So real quick on that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. There are no curb cuts to the houses facing Bird Street in the current plan.
Yes, they use an arrow.
So the access would be one road that goes in, if we can pull that map up, and there's an alley that goes behind them. So if the alley isn't showing up on this version, but yeah, right through
Right
there.
here.
would be an alley.
Okay, so they don't.
They would be fronting in a, I don't want to use urban because I think like big city, but like a town, like in town where we front the street and.
Traditional
away from
neighborhood.
our porches.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like
Let's
to
just
see
say there's a porch, right?
So I'd like to see some kind of a condition with a visual barrier, be that trees or bushes or landscaping or whatever along Bird Street, so that I don't see a bunch of the back of people's houses.
So that's the front of the houses. That would be the front of the house. So just like on, what's the next street over? I'm sorry.
Page.
Yeah.
So what
So
I'd
you're
like to
good.
see
So
is,
this is
I don't want to be
discussion.
standing here and see a bunch of people's houses here, but I wanted some kind of visual barrier along. here.
So if that's their front porch.
Yep.
You would like a visual barrier between the street. and the front.
Correct. Another thing
Right
that I'd like as well is I want to make sure that the water that runs off of here doesn't get dumped down into the basin. So the town's gonna have to pay for that?
No, sir, that would, so there's one thing I want to catch up on this part. before you can disturb more than 1 acre of land in Virginia, you have to have a stormwater
Okay,
program.
okay.
Part of that would be the street and infrastructure building is the developer's responsibility.
Okay.
So
Lastly, what I would like to do is put in some sort of a condition saying no 2 adjacent houses can have the same architecture. So we have a lot of architectural diversity in the town. I'd like to extend that into this as well too.
And that probably, those are great comments, so thank you. I wanted to make sure we were clear on that.
Yep, that's good.
And the next,
And may I ask some more questions about the?
Yeah.
So it's my understanding, just from seeing this, is that the reason that the houses would be facing Bird Street
Yeah.
is the idea is to continue the traditional neighborhood character of having houses. So if you walk along Page or you walk along Harrison, you have, I mean, it's traditional and dorky, but like waving from, I love waving to my neighbors from the front. And so the idea is actually to not act like the development isn't there, but by providing the visual barrier, but to integrate into the rest of the historic downtown. And that I think is to me as a planner with my values, looking at this objectively, that's probably the best thing about this whole development. And that is that it extends the historic fabric of downtown, the walkable nature, the safety of being able to see the street. And so you're very entitled to your opinion, but just I wanted to point out that it seems like the continuation of traditional neighborhood design is the goal there.
we are getting near the end, and we've had very constructive comments. You were next.
I'm just a comment that I would like to have addressed. It's probably not the platform for it, maybe at future meetings, and it's not on the developer, but it is something I would like the town and the county to talk about, is adding more people. You know, internet and wireless right now is something that so many people are working from home. It's an issue that we have. You don't have to go far in this town to find out CenturyLink is not well received, but it's the only provider that we have for most of the area. And it's not serving the needs of the current citizens. I mean, we've been out of internet for 2 weeks now from the last snowstorm. It's supposed to get fixed next week. They already told me it's probably going to get pushed with this current snowstorm coming. I would not like to see more people in here when we can't already have the needs met with the citizens that are here. And so I would like the county and the town to maybe, if you are going to have more people, have some plan in place. Because at this point in the day, everybody needs wireless. It is the same as power and water. So that's something I would like to address before we decide to add X number of people in house.
It should be addressed. I will tell you from my experience, working actually for Comcast and doing analysis for them, is that they look for density, because the internet provider, the more density you have.
That sounds like a chicken and egg issue. We need more people to get better service. We need to also have the service needs met for people before we get more people in.
I do think you are right, and I think that's a valuable comment that needs to be addressed to develop a plan. To give a comment real quick, yeah, I couldn't tell.
I was just wondering, you bring up an interesting thing. We live where we can see where the Firefly line is going down because they are on Comcast. Comcast goes right in front of the Lenham Road Heights on it, Albavina Springs. Are those people going to be on Comcast or are they going to be on Appalachian? If they're on are they going to be on Central Virginia or on Appalachian? If they're going to be on Central Virginia, they'll have Firefly. If they're going to be on Appalachian, you're going to be on CenturyLink. And CenturyLink is being sold. It's being degraded. And we're not going to have anything once it is sold, even though they say it's going to be better.
Well, yeah, and it's another consideration if you want to attract people that can afford this level of housing and the people that would live in this next neighborhood. If they're going to be working from home or have kids in school, they're going to need something. And if they find out, I mean, we looked at places in Louisiana, we flat out said we're not buying this because there's not good internet. So it would be something I would think the county want to address before they start selling these lots.
And they also go sell Beam as a supplier of internet. Beam Tower is down behind the Union Baptist Church. The beam does not come over where the blue tower is to our property. And we're just out of luck.
Well, so I think as far as international, that's a valuable consideration that you guys have captured, correct? All right, as we wrap this up, I want to go to you, because
Well, we don't have time to do it now, but we've never even touched that. The development of the factory. You're gonna have houses on one side, you're gonna have 50, perhaps 50 apartments in the factory, which could be. So my point is, I guess if they do a traffic analysis study, they need to take that into account, that not just how many 480 people go there, but how many people would be going to and from the factory to work. Back, I was here when the factory was in session, there were 100 people going up and down those streets. And shift work wasn't bad, but now you have a factory, it's going to be light industry, you have all kinds of uses to it. There's going to be people living there, and they're going to be right across the street from working, or apartments or whatever. So that whole needs to be taken into consideration.
I got that captured again, specifically. Yeah, we don't have a plan for the factory, so it's hard to say what that would look like, but consider it. So before I call on you, I just want to give you guys a little bit of instructions. I think you probably already started doing it, but if you could start thinking about the questions that have been brought up, and if there are specific comments, all these are going to be given to the city council so that they can consider them. And as the more specific they are, I would think the more helpful they would be, not just in making a decision, but also if the decision is to move forward, what conditions would be placed on? Does that make sense? So if you could just do that in our last few minutes and go ahead.
Yeah, just a quick question, Stuart, just for clarity. You're saying that no home, one of the things you would like to see, maybe a possible condition, that no adjoining home would be the same. Are you under the assumption that there'll be 48 individual homes, or are you saying, because the original proposal was to have quadruplexes and duplexes, they weren't even original. The original proposal didn't have individual homes. Are you saying that you want them to be individual homes, nothing? Are you saying quadruplex, see where I'm going?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to have some architectural variety within the development.
Yeah, rather than cookie cutter.
Yeah,
Maybe 4 different models and mix them up.
yeah.
Well, and again, because that could be put in the SUP. And that really comes into play if one developer buys this whole thing, is putting things in. If people are buying a lot, you're buying a lot and having your builder put it on, you're buying a lot and putting your builder on. Then they are likely going to be different anyways, but having that in there as a backstop is good. All right, last chance before our next one starts. You didn't say anything this time.
I'm more just observing and taking notes and.
Okay, well, that's valuable too, so thank you very much. And thank you all for taking time today. It's very important what you've done today to get here, and this is very helpful, and I felt like this was a very good conversation. I'm sure not everybody is super 100% pleased with everything, but hopefully you feel a little more involved and also a little more informed. So thank you.
Great.
So what I want to make sure is that. Where's it? So, question is.
You want.
Maybe I will. Yeah, that's what I was hoping. It's interesting. Yeah.
Progress.
I am too.
All of these little developments are now going on.
Yeah, all these that look like that.
So, I think, yeah, I think I feel like we're very mixed metaphor there.
Oh, yeah.